Welcome to Epoch News. I'm Tatiana Darzi. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has been spreading disinformation on social media platforms with the use of online bots and paid trolls, known as China's 50-cent army, in order to amplify their agenda.
The Chinese Communist Party has been spreading disinformation on an international level, using social media such as Twitter after the outbreak of the pandemic caused by the CCP virus. A few days ago, the Department of State accused the Chinese Communist Party of distorting public information using artificial intelligence and military bots with the intention of blaming the West and avoiding taking the responsibility for the cover-up. On May 8th, Leah Gabriel, the special envoy and coordinator of the Global Engagement Center, indicated in a phone interview that the CCP officials are extremely active on international social media platforms despite Twitter being banned in mainland China. There's an increased use of bot networks used to amplify Chinese narratives created by CCP officials. She said the campaign was part of an effort to make the world see China as a global leader in the response rather than the source of the pandemic.
After the U.S. Department of State exposed the propaganda done by the CCP on Twitter and in U.S. media, we can see that the Department of State now has a very clear picture of the important role of monopolizing and controlling information on a global level played by the Chinese Communist Party.
Zhang expressed that the CCP sees propaganda and brainwashing as a primary means of maintaining its stability and power. Therefore, it is trying to alter Westerners' correct perception of the value of freedom and democracy.
This type of propaganda and brainwashing not only exists on Twitter and Facebook, but also reaches out to other areas where it is able to do the same. The 50-cent army or the bots are able to penetrate the market and interact with humans and other bots through the lead of high-end technology.
Gabrielle gave an example. 2 accounts that are linked to the Chinese Foreign Ministry at ZLJ517, which is MFA Deputy Director Zhao's account, and at spokesperson CHN, which is the MFA spokesperson account, these two share 3,423 of their most recent 10,000 followers, and nearly 40% of the most recent followers were created in just a 6-week period between March 1st and April 15th. So it's our assessment that this network could be deployed to allow the CCP to rapidly amplify and spread their propaganda around the world, skewing the conversation to its benefit. Gabrielle portrayed the move as part of an effort by China to emulate Russian tactics that came to light during the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The CCP's bot network had already been rehearsing on Twitter during Hong Kong's protests of the extradition bill. After the CCP virus broke out and became a global pandemic, the number of Twitter accounts created by Chinese diplomats, embassies, and consulates skyrocketed by 2.5 times, not to mention the large army of bots behind it.
More and more people have now seen the true colors of the Chinese Communist Party during the CCP virus pandemic. In other words, the CCP is facing unprecedented interrogations, challenges, and oppositions. The CCP is getting more and more anxious now that the only way to combat and to discredit their opponents is to use even more resources in different methods, which includes technology and tech-related means that the CCP has acquired and mastered by theft and infiltration over the years.
She indicated that the Americans have realized that the policy of appeasement to the Chinese Communist Party over the years is a mistake. The U.S. is losing patience with the CCP's dishonest and shameful behavior.
Many U.S. high-ranking officials have made it clear that the United States will take both this human catastrophe caused by the CCP virus and the tyranny of the Chinese Communist regime very seriously.
The researchers at the Global Engagement Center continue to see Chinese and Russian narratives converge and echo each other with propaganda on the internet. For example, the Italians launched a campaign to thank the services of their doctors and nurses during the outbreak of the virus, but this action was retweeted by the CCP's official mouthpiece, Global Times, as an appreciation of China from Italy. Later, many Twitter accounts associated with the Russian government retweeted these posts.
Neither the CCP nor Russia will succeed by using these methods against the United States. In fact, the United States is not only powerful in its conceptual democracy, but it is powerful in a comprehensive way. The CCP itself is now facing very huge crises that are likely to bring the regime down at a critical point in time.
Gabrielle emphasized that fighting against disinformation is just as important as it is in preventing the virus in democratic countries. The United States and its allies are cooperating together to disclose the disinformation ecosystem that the CCP and Russia are building.
Senator Lindsey Graham on Tuesday introduced legislation to allow the U.S. to impose a wide range of sanctions on the Chinese regime. That's if China refuses to be open and transparent about how the virus started. An international investigation into the origins of the virus is looking increasingly likely. Graham said in a statement that he is convinced that without Chinese Communist Party deception, the virus would not be here in the United States. He says he's also convinced the regime will never cooperate with a serious investigation, citing its refusal to allow the international community to investigate key sites like the Wuhan laboratory. The legislation is called the COVID-19 Accountability Act. It's co-sponsored by 8 other Republican senators. It would require President Trump to certify to Congress within 60 days that China had provided a full and complete accounting to a virus investigation. The investigation could be led by the U.S., its allies, or a UN affiliate such as the World Health Organization. The bill would authorize the president to impose a range of sanctions if the regime doesn't come through. These include asset freezes, travel bans, and barring U.S. institutions from making loans to Chinese businesses. There are also other conditions in the bill: that China close its wet markets and release all Hong Kong pro-democracy advocates. President Trump says he has a very good relationship with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, yet Trump is also suggesting that cutting off America's relationships with China would save the United States $500 billion.
We caught them.
President Donald Trump has again expressed his strong dissatisfaction with the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up of the CCP virus in an interview with Fox News on May 14th, and suggests for the first time that cutting off the whole relationship can be an option if necessary. In an interview with Fox News, Donald Trump indicated that he is not happy with the way China handled the pandemic.
And it could have been put out, and it should have been put out. And we asked to go over, and they said no. They didn't want our help. And I figured that was okay because they must know what they're doing. So it was either stupidity, incompetence, or it was deliberate, one or the other.
When the pandemic was ravaging the United States, the Chinese regime was attempting to rewrite the U.S.-China trade agreement, which has been agreed upon between the two nations, and hiring hackers to steal vaccine research from the United States.
There are many things we could do. We could do things. We could cut off the whole relationship. Now, if you did, what would happen? You'd save $500 billion.
On May 13th, President Trump tweeted that dealing with China is a very expensive thing to do. The world was hit by the plague from China. 100 trade deals wouldn't make up the difference and all the innocent lives lost. At the same time, the Trump administration will also take action to clean up the WTO and other international organizations that have been severely infiltrated by the Chinese regime.
But the World Trade Organization is horrible. We've been treated very badly. I've been saying it for a long time, and we act on it. When I talk, we act on it.
The Trump administration has announced the pulling back of funding for the WHO, the organization that helped the Chinese regime to cover up the pandemic and allow it to spread around the world. The administration will announce its next step in dealing with the WHO next week.
A new rule that began on May 11th limits visas for Chinese journalists working in the United States to just 90 days. The measure is aimed at protecting U.S. national security by allowing for more frequent review of Chinese journalists entering the country. The restriction does not apply to journalists from Hong Kong or Macau.
On Monday, May 11th, the United States began to tighten travel visas for Chinese journalists to protect the U.S. national security. The United States Department of Homeland Security announced that the new measure took effect on May 11th, and this new rule will limit visas for Chinese reporters to a 90-day period, with the option to extend. Previously, such visas were usually unrestricted and did not need to be extended. A senior Department of Homeland Security official said the new rules would allow the department to review Chinese journalists' visa applications more frequently and would likely reduce the overall number of Chinese journalists in the United States, It's going to create greater national security protections, the officer said. The new rules will not apply to journalists with passports from Hong Kong or Macau, China's two semi-autonomous territories, according to DHS. In March this year, the Chinese Communist Party expelled American journalists from the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post from China.
Residents in Wuhan are not allowed to gather in person or even online to hold the regime accountable for the deaths of their loved ones due to the CCP virus. Local police are monitoring user accounts and can suppress those who speak out against the regime.
Mr. Chang's father died of the CCP virus on February 1st. His father had unknowingly contracted the virus when the regime intentionally hid the outbreak. Mr. Chang wants to set up a monument for people who died of the CCP virus as a warning to prevent it from happening again. Just for that, he has become the target of suppression.
There are also others who want to hold the regime accountable, but it takes courage. The regime won't allow it. I want to have a monument for those who died of the pandemic as a commemoration and as a lesson so that we will never forget. It is a warning to ensure that when an outbreak happens, we must have it disclosed and warn people for protection. I know how difficult it will be. I might end up going nowhere trying to hold the regime accountable, but at least I have tried so that it would comfort my father. To date, I have not retrieved his remains.
Is the burial not done?
No. They said my father's work unit must get involved in the process. I absolutely object to that. I am an adult. I don't need anyone outside the family to retrieve his remains and conduct this burial for my father. This is something personal, solemn, and serious. We don't need any outsider. In fact, this so-called work unit is also taking orders from the Wuhan city officials. Before he went into a coma, he told me, "Son, I don't want to die." He asked me to beg the doctor to save him. I will never forget this. It's really painful whenever I think of his words. Wuhan officials told me not to contact foreign press because this is Chinese matters. But who would dare to report it in China? I have been contacted by the local press. The article was ready, but the leader of the press just blocked it by saying, "Can't publish it. That's it. It won't get reported."
When did the Politics and Law Committee staff call you?
Last month near the end of March. I was really upset. They would spend time to call me rather than take care of my request, but keep on monitoring my phone, my social media accounts, and even putting my posts on hold so that no one can see.
Have the police visited you these days?
Yes, they came the other day. They wanted me to go to the police station. They came this morning again. I told them if I have committed a crime, they can just arrest me. I won't go. But they came again this afternoon, so I went. Because I have set up a chat room, they asked me, "Can you guarantee there's no anti-Chinese force in your group with the current complicated domestic and international situation?" I said, "I can guarantee you that they are all the victims' families. We have met, we are all victims." They said someone in the group has posted a lawsuit template. I said, I didn't do it, but some victims are surely into filing a lawsuit. That's their choice and their rights. Then they told me that I can't set up a chat room. I asked, which rule was that? It is my legal right to set up a chat room.
How many victims' families have you connected into this petition for the deaths?
I definitely won't connect them together. We have to do it with individual effort. I can't represent anyone else, and no one represents me. We can't even say we are a team. There's a rule in Wuhan. The officials said it clearly. If there are 5 people joining in the effort of petitioning the government, they will capture us. They have monitored all victim families' social media accounts.
It seems that many victims' families would just let go. They'd rather not talk about it anymore.
That's because many of them work in the units under the regime. There is a lot of indiscernible pressure. There was a guy in Wuhan. He's been bombarded by police calls from his community center. Their calls even reached his work unit. He was very upset and asked them, "Are you trying to get me fired?" They would exploit every possible way to get you to retrieve the remains and get a burial under their watch. That's their task. Why do the Wuhan city officials regulate someone irrelevant to participate in the entire process? That's because they don't want these victims' families to get to know each other in the process of retrieving the remains. They are afraid that we might get together to file complaints. That's why they want someone to watch you. I will absolutely not accept this.
When the world calls for transparency and answers to the spread and source of the CCP virus, the regime threatens with severed tourism and agricultural tradings. This is the case as to Australia's inquiry into the CCP virus. To Wuhan victims' request, it is censorship and potential jail time. The interview was conducted on May 5th by Xiaohua Gu of the Chinese language Epoch Times.
A woman living in Heilongjiang, a city of about 3 million along China's border with Russia, describes on video the current situation in the city. She says many people are out of work and many have spent nearly their entire savings.
A woman in Heilongjiang videotaped herself describing the situation in the city. She revealed that many people are now jobless and have almost exhausted their savings.
In this shopping mall, the majority of stores are closed. There are no visitors here. A while ago, we suffered the first round of the pandemic, and now we are experiencing a rebound from the imported cases, which is just as tough as the first wave. The past 5 months are just too difficult for us. Most people have little savings left. Business owners have very few customers and their employees have become jobless. We have to pay our mortgage and car loans. We have to support the elderly and children in the family. I don't know much about the situation of others. For myself, I stay away from expensive products and only pick cheap or discounted commodities when I go grocery shopping. I have more expenses than earnings during these months. I don't know how much longer we can survive. Even if I am willing to leave my hometown to find a job, it will be impossible.
甚至我们现在想出去打工都打不了。出去一个是需要被隔离。
First, we must undergo quarantine if we go to another place. People outside Heilongjiang province definitely won't hire anyone from Heilongjiang. Another issue is that now we are transitioning from spring to summer and temperatures fluctuate a lot. We are too afraid to get ill because we just cannot afford to become ill. I just want to say that I really hope our seniors can have a comfortable retirement life. Kids can have a happy childhood and resume school sometime soon, and young people like us can continue our careers without having too many worries. So please be kind to us Heilongjiang residents. We really cannot hold on much longer.
In April, several clusters of the CCP virus outbreak emerged from hospitals in Harbin and Heilongjiang, two major cities in northeastern China's Heilongjiang province. This indicates that people living in those areas are now suffering from a second wave of the CCP virus pandemic.
China's ambassador to the U.S. published an op-ed in the Washington Post claiming that the Chinese regime is ready to cooperate with foreign investigations into the origin of the CCP virus, yet the regime's actions tell a different story. Jan Jekielek, the host of American Thought Leaders, interviews Frank Gaffney, vice chairman of the Committee on the Present Danger in China, about the gap between what Chinese officials publicly tell Americans and the CCP's true ambitions.
You know, it's very interesting. There is, we've seen this Asia Society letter of a whole bunch of noted individuals saying that, we need to cooperate and so forth. We see the Chinese Communist Party representatives. Just recently, there was, I believe, an editorial in the Washington Post by the Chinese ambassador talking about how China is ready to cooperate. These kinds of ideas. Yet there seems to be a lot of indication that there isn't a willingness to cooperate.
I think you have to stay focused on both what the Chinese are saying to, their own party cadre and what they're doing. Not what they're saying to us, what their propaganda outlets are promoting, or what their fellow travelers, useful idiots, whatever you want to call them, are touting in terms of essentially echoing the party line. What they're saying to themselves, to their sort of leadership circles, is very clearly that the United States is the enemy, and that Communist China will prevail over that enemy by the cumulative effects of its now decades-long efforts through asymmetric warfare or unrestricted warfare, through predatory trade practices, through their Belt and Road Initiative, through their dominance of space, through their dominance of the 5G telecommunications universe, through their military buildup. They will prevail over us. They will become the world's dominant power. That's what's really afoot here. And anything else that they say for our consumption or would have us believe or join their, well, as I say, their helpmates in the West to sort of trumpet on their behalf about cooperation or about their, peaceful rise and their commitment to, full and transparent relationship commercially and militarily and otherwise. It's simply not true. And we treat it as anything other than disinformation designed to confuse or at least paralyze us at our extreme peril.
To watch the entire video on American thought leaders, please visit the link below this video. The following charts show you the most recent numbers regarding the CCP virus pandemic. The Chinese Communist Party's cover-up led to a pandemic that now threatens the lives of people around the globe. With over 4.4 million people infected, China is still defensive about independent international inquiry into the origin and spread of the CCP virus. The Epoch Times has initiated a global Sign the Petition campaign calling for investigating, condemning, and rejecting the CCP. We believe that investigating and exposing the truth is the only way we can remain safe. Let's take action. Sign the petition at ccpvirustruth.com. That's all for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this program with friends and family to keep them informed about the latest news and updates. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.